All right, tonight's topic, again, a lot of fun, a lot of grist and material here to talk about and work with, and I'll explain why that's true. So I'm going to open with a prayer. We're going to talk about the moral argument for God's existence, among other things. I have, whenever I teach this, I have a lot of goals in play. One of them, obviously, is to teach the moral argument for God's existence. That's like numero uno. I want to show that based on objective morality, that God's existence is highly likely, okay, versus morality that we define ourselves, okay? But number two, it gives us an opportunity to talk about morality and the moral guidelines and laws that God has that helps us guide our lives. And I think that's a blessing. It's a common grace blessing from God, but it gives us a chance to talk about it and to work through moral dilemmas as well, because we face those every day of our life. So there's a lot here, a lot I'll try to accomplish. But as I talked to Aaron about earlier, if anyone has any questions or comments at any stage, just raise your hand. If I can't answer it, I'll keep track of it. And then at the end, we'll also have time to work through a lot of challenges to the moral argument, okay? And the challenges to moral objectivity. So we'll have a chance to do that. We'll get us out of here, 8, a little bit after, and we can stay around as long as we need, okay? So that's kind of the agenda. Let me open this up with prayer. Lord God, this evening, help us to discover more about how you've designed us to be moral creatures. In your Son, Jesus' name, amen. Okay, even though we're going to jump into this, it's been more than a month since we talked about the other two arguments for God's existence that we generally do here at UNT. One is the cosmological argument. The second is the argument from design, including fine-tuning of the universe. So I just want to walk through those syllogisms real quick. For those of you that weren't here, you can at least kind of see what we're building on. Because remember, the total argument for God's existence is a cumulative case argument, right? None of these arguments or this evidence proves the God of the Bible. It's a cumulative case to get there. And I want to make sure we have that foundation in place. The first argument is the cosmological argument, and here's the syllogism. Ready? Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Right? We walked through those premises. There's a lot of scientific evidence to show that the universe did have a beginning. Although 100 years ago, we'd be sitting here and we'd be claiming that the universe was eternal. But today we know that's not true based on scientific evidence, even very recent evidence. All right? Now, that cause, that uncaused cause, we can deduce quite a few characteristics, right? We know it's obviously very powerful, but maybe some things you haven't thought about. Volitional, right? Choosing to create. Personal. Why do I say personal? Because one of the creations is us. And so we can not only apprehend, but we can comprehend, not fully, the cause. And so I see a personal connection and a personal relationship there. And then, of course, the cause is outside time, outside space, outside matter, right? And we see some other things that we can deduce from the cause of the universe, all right? The second argument is the argument from design, okay? And it is every design has a designer. The universe and biological life shows highly complex design. Therefore, the universe and biological life has a designer, right? So again, we can look at that designer and we can say, wow, this is like a super engineer coding information in our genome so our cells know when they're dividing what they should do next, for example. and how this cell is a fingernail cell, and this cell is a hair cell, you know. So that's just one aspect of the design. And we talked about how to spot design. We talked about irreducible complexity. So those are the first two arguments that we're building on tonight. Any questions or thoughts to this point? All right, beautiful. So then let's pivot. So I want to ask you a question. Those of you that know the biblical God, right? You know he does not like transgressions against his moral nature. If you've read the Old Testament and that, you know, roughly 3,000-year history, you know the God of the Bible is wrathful against transgressions to his moral nature. We call that sin. So the question is God's wrath, is it more like an earthquake where it comes with no warning, or more like a hurricane where it comes with advance warning? It's a bit of a rhetorical question, but what's the right answer? Earthquake or hurricane? More like a hurricane. Comes with advance warning. And I'd submit to you that advance warning system is part of the moral intuition that God puts in us. And it helps point us to the God of the Bible because we see a separation, right? I know that I am far from God's perfect moral character. And you might know that about yourself as well. And so deep down inside, I not only know there's a God, we're going to get there, but I also know that I am far apart from that God. And ultimately, I can reason very easily that I need a Savior. I need a rescue plan, right? So this is the neat thing about thinking about the moral argument, is it's personal. It's personal for me, and it's probably personal for you too. So even though tonight's discussion is definitely apologetics, it's also personal, and I hope it impacts you in that way, and you'll think about your own connection and alignment and relationship with God. Okay. All right. So one of the neat things about the argument is we're all experts on it, because unlike, say, the argument from design, where you had to be kind of a scientist to pick up on some of the stuff, and irreducible complexity, it's a little sciencey, or understanding, galaxy seeds or the radiation left over from the Big Bang. This argument is about moral things, and we all feel like we're moral experts. I don't mean that in the pejorative. I mean, just driving here, I saw a guy on a bicycle almost get run over by a car. And I became a moral expert at that point because I knew who was in the right and who was in the wrong. And if you drive a car, you probably feel that way most of your drive, right? The guy cut me off. Why? Why did he pull in front of me, heading toward the stoplight? Now I have to brake faster. We all today are thinking about moral things. Let me give you a new syllogism. Every law has a lawgiver. This is the Norman Geisler, Frank Turek version of the syllogism, by the way, not the William Lane Craig, if you track with that. Every law is a lawgiver. There is a moral law. Therefore, there is a moral lawgiver. We'll spend most of our time on premise 2. So can anybody give it back to me? I'm going to call on somebody in a minute. Jenna. Every.
As a lawgiver.
Anyone? Yeah. Premise 2. There is a moral law. Therefore, there is a moral lawgiver. Okay. So it's pretty easy. Now, I've got to show evidence for these premises, but it is a valid argument, right? You would agree? The logic works. Okay, let's make sure that we understand what I mean about there is a moral law. That's where the rubber's really going to hit the road. Now, sometimes this moral law is referred to as a moral intuition. Aaron and I were talking about that earlier. Or the natural law, or nature's law, or conscience, or just a fundamental sense of right or wrong. For tonight's session, I'm going to just refer to it as objective morality. Objective morality being defined as what is right or wrong for all people, all times, in all places. All right? So that's a tall marching order, right? Objective morality, what is right or wrong for all people, all times, all places. All right? Okay. We good with that so far? All right, sounds good. Now, question. Can anybody, based on the definition, can anybody name something that is objectively wrong? Murder? Any thoughts on that? If you think murder is objectively wrong, please raise your hand. Okay. Emmy, hand is down. So, what's your thought on that?
There probably should be a subtype that we categorize as right or wrong. So, murdering an infant would be objectively morally wrong, whereas some other scenario it could be.
So we get into definition of murder, right? So if you said murder was the taking of an innocent life, would then you agree that it's objectively wrong?
Yes.
Yeah, so definitions are really, really important along the way. So, okay. So we probably have consensus on murder. Any other ideas on objective wrong?
Rape is objectively wrong?
Rape is objectively wrong, according to Ramey. If you think rape is objectively wrong, raise your hand. Okay, looks like we have consensus. Let me give you a list. Now, technically, in order to just satisfy this syllogism, right, there's a moral law, every law is a lawgiver, there's a moral law. To satisfy that premise, we really just need one example, okay? The classic example, does anyone know what the classic example is? The apologist, philosopher classic example?
Yeah, it's always wrong to torture babies for fun.
Torture babies for fun, right? Which is kind of where Emmy was, yeah. So it seems like everyone agrees to that one. And if that one's true, then the argument's true. Then there is a moral lawgiver, okay? This is where I start to get a little creative and deviate from that because I think we can get more from this. So I'm going to put a list up right now, and let's talk about whether these are objectively wrong or not. Well.
That's objectively wrong.
Yeah. Now those are kind of coming out funky, but I think you can read them. So I put, well, just take a look at the list and see what you think. On the right-hand side, I put some more that are a little bit more gray, but I tried to define them. Now this would be kind of my short list, but I'd have a larger list, right? But this is my short list that I think works for a session like this. Thank you. Yeah. Not impartiality, but partiality. Mm-hmm. And I use that word because that's a biblical word. Mm-hmm. Paul speaks to that. James as well, yeah. Any comments on anything on the list there? Josh and then Kevin.
Could you argue that it's okay to lie if you're trying to protect someone?
Yeah.
If you're trying to protect, I would call that a moral dilemma. And in a moral dilemma, you're going to choose the greater good, but that doesn't take away the underlying morality of lying, right? So you're making an exception in order to do the greater good, but lying would still be wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, John?
Stealing is a big question for me in a lot of ways, right? So the book, well, I guess also the musical Les Mis.
Yeah.
Jean Valjean is sent to like this horrible work, like working on a shipyard for like decades because he stole a loaf of bread to feed his, I think his cousin.
Right.
But what you said there kind of clears it up a little bit. Is like it's bad that he has to steal it all, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Not necessarily that the act itself was like some grievous transgression. But yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting to think about because there's so many cases in which people have like
Right.
stuff and they're not going to miss it, And
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'd put that in the category of moral dilemmas, and it's a dilemma because there is an objective morality underneath it. That's why it's a dilemma. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a dilemma, right? The classic argument, and Kevin, I'm sorry, I missed you. I went right to John, but the classical ethical moral dilemma is 5 people in a lifeboat designed for 4 and need to make a decision about who's going to exit in order to save the life of the 4. Yeah. So would that be murder, intentional or not, or self-sacrifice? Depends on what happens. But the greater good would happen, but murder is still wrong, even if we decided to, tie someone up and throw them over to the sharks, right? Yeah. Kevin, what's your thought?
It was objectively wrong for you to skip me. So I think there are some very helpful nuances. I think lying, for instance, comes in different species.
Yeah.
One species is deception. And I would say that deception is appropriate in contexts of just warfare and unlawful aggression.
Yeah.
For instance, wearing camouflage
Right.
in the military is deception.
Yes.
Because you're not a bush.
Yeah. Yeah. Even a head fake in basketball.
Or leaving
Yeah.
the lights on when you're on vacation,
Uh-huh.
especially on a timer.
Right. Right.
But these sorts of things are not, I wouldn't classify them as lying. Lying is typically something that's more self-serving. Deception in unlawful aggression,
Yeah.
I wouldn't place in that category.
Yeah.
And one example we used with our kids was the Harry Potter series. So to think about Harry Potter and his friends,
Yeah.
there's a difference between lying about not doing your homework and lying in a context of warfare where you're deceiving the enemy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just think that's
Yeah.
just as I would say all murder is the taking of human life, but not all taking of human life is murder,
Right. Yeah.
because murder is the unjust taking of human life, or the unjust taking of innocent human life.
Innocent human life. Yeah.
I'm just curious, is there any nuance to the Hebrew and the Ten Commandments that makes it?
Absolutely there is. I mean, there's a whole history discussion saying that thou shalt not murder has nothing to do with capital punishment or
Yeah,
warfare.
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking.
It's a different category.
But is there something like that for lying?
I would say that it's exhibited in Scripture. You have, for instance, Rahab deceives the pursuers of the spies, or the Israelite spies going into the promised land. Spying is lying, so to speak, but it's in a context of warfare, so it's deception.
Yeah. If anyone wants to dive deeper into this, of course, C.S. Lewis wrote a lot about this during World War II. Just war theory really dives deep into some of the deception and other things that go on in war. Rebecca, you were going to say something.
It kind of goes back to your classic example a while ago, but almost any of these things that maybe seem a little bit on the gray area, if you add the words for fun, most of them become objectively wrong.
Yeah, good point.
If you're lying for fun,
Good point.
or if you're doing
Yeah, that's a good point.
for fun.
Good point. I do think the idea of a moral dilemma is only a dilemma because you are breaking what might be considered an objective wrong. Yeah, is also helpful. Emmy.
This interesting concept on stealing, like when you steal from the rich, you're not actually stealing. Here comes the concept of who the item or whatever the object belongs to. So like the starving families of the falling in of the Soviet Union, for example, like the dads would steal coal, wood, or just food to be able to save their children. So is this morally wrong? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you're in the category of moral dilemma. I mean, I'm a dad of 3 children, and if I have to take something that belongs to somebody else, I'm probably going to do it out of desperation. I would say that it's still stealing, but it's justifiable, and of course, in my conscience, I would try to rectify it, at some point. But when you get into those gray areas, and then one person decides, like a Robin Hood type of situation, like just because you have more than me, I'm going to steal from you, and it's justified. Now you're in a different place, right? Yeah.
Do you think these are exceptions, or do you think these still fall into the category of the word? Because it's a large spectrum that we understand under each word, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's not an exception of it. Maybe it is inherently a part of it.
Yeah.
Like justified killing is not murder, so maybe you're saying justified stealing is not stealing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Yeah, and maybe Kevin was moving us in that direction a minute ago. I'm not aware of any sort of justified stealing that is in a biblical context where we're given permission for that. But I am aware of justified killing in a war context. So if anyone else is aware of any sort of biblical justified stealing,
I think it talks about like lessened punishment.
Sure.
And what you talked about, where someone like laws whatever, probably like worked this horrible, like as a slave practically.
Yeah.
For this insane amount of time. In scripture, it talks about how if you take someone's eye, then your eye is the cost or the punishment, right? So it's a just kind of like the punishment should not outweigh the crime. In the sense of like what we're permitted to execute as fellow humans, not obviously different rules for different authority for God, for instance.
Yeah. So there are degrees, right? Like we know murder has degrees, even within our legal system. Manslaughter, 2nd degree, 1st degree. So you could argue that, but you could argue that there are exceptions to all of these, including rape, right? You could argue that, but we wouldn't be even having the discussion if there weren't some underlying, I should not steal from Emmy. Something's precious to you, it doesn't matter whether it's precious or not, I shouldn't steal from you. That's the underlying. Now, is there an exception to the rule based on some moral dilemma, right? We're going to face those all the time in our life. I like what C.S. Lewis had to say about objective morality. Think of a country where people were admired for running away in battle, or a man felt proud for double-crossing all the people who have been kindest to him. You might just as well try to imagine a country where 2 + 2 = 5. So there's a general sense of morality and virtue, right, on the other side of the coin, that exists for all people, all places, all time, right? Now I'm going to get to in a minute, unlike other laws, we can deny the moral law much easier than we can deny, say, something else in God's creation like gravity, okay? So we'll get there. All right. I like what Bujeski also has to say at UT Austin. Everyone knows certain principles. There is no land where murder is virtue and gratitude is vice. All right. So, yes, Zach.
There's just something I would like to say about this. everything here in general, that this objective morality does exist across all peoples and all times. And specifically in war, where nations, they have virtue. And so they celebrate their own moral character. And if we look at history, if we see colonists in North America and their interactions with the natives, well, what many people assume is that, well, during the time, is that the natives were sort of savage in their behavior. There might be extreme cases of, I don't know, some story where it seems like they're immoral or they're savage. But that is only in the context, in a lot of cases, I won't say only, but in the context of war. So the other side of that is that, I mean, they're going to act savagely towards their enemy. But when they take prisoners, we see this in history where they treat them very, very well. I mean, they feed them, clothe them, give them jobs to do. They're just...
You mean the colonists did?
The natives.
Oh, the natives. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because in some war instances, the prisoners aren't treated very well. And every situation's unique. I mean, the Ukraine-Russian war, we could spend all time talking about that. We could talk about the Declaration of Independence time frame and was it justified even from a biblical sense, the American Revolution, you know. That doesn't deny that there's objective morality, right? But it shows the complexity of morality and the idea of working our way through to a just, decision or cause. John.
Yeah, well, I mean, so studying the indigenous peoples of America has been like really interesting for me because it is like very different and then also very similar in certain ways, right? So, I mean, the problem with talking about the indigenous people of America is that there's like a ton of different tribes, all with their own history and practices, right? And they all, so, at certain times, like, they would just kill the prisoners, right? Like, at certain times, they would just do that. But at other times, they would, and this depends on who's even doing it, right? And then in the context of warfare, something that I've been thinking about is like the presence in their pantheon of a war god, like, makes warfare an endemic prospect. For example, in the Mexica or the Aztec pantheon, right? Like they just do war like all the time. Like it's just a part of their society. It never really ends. And a big part of this is taking people captive and then sacrificing them. They like dress them up as in the aspect of a god, and they sacrifice them. So they venerate them and then they sacrifice them. And if the captive, because they all have the same religion in that region, if the captive displays cowardice, they go to like the bad afterlife. And so like all of this stuff, it makes me think like there's some kind of like human nature that keeps generating various things and various responses to things. Like cowardice is punished, right? But then and then like this, I said they all have the same religion, but the other tribes would get like really pissed off that they were being killed in this way, right? And so it was easier for Cortez to turn the other tribes against the Aztecs, right? And so it's like, all of this stuff is like so twisty-turvy, I don't know.
Yeah.
That it's like, I don't know, like, it's like, I think there are probably some like universal aspects to morality, but whether that makes it objective, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second, that the facts, someone's facts can change, and I think a good example is the Nuremberg trials, right? After World War II, the Germans were held to account for what they had just done in the atrocities for the Gypsies against the Jews, and they appealed, right, to a sense of law that existed in Germany. But the three nations that tried them, Russia, Great Britain, and the US, appealed to an objective moral sense that it doesn't matter what you think about Jews, that they're subhuman, a lesser race. They appealed to the idea that they're humans, human beings, and they deserve a right to life, right? So the Nuremberg trials and that transcendent objective morality is a good example for us to hang on to, no matter what the Nazi regime or the Third Reich thought about gypsies and Jews, right? So they had, basically the trial was, you have your facts wrong. Gypsies and Jews are not like dogs and pigs. They're human persons. And so boom, the trial ended and they were able to prosecute and hang and some of the folks that carried out atrocities. Kevin, you were going to say something.
I'll make this as quick as I can.
Yeah.
This needs to be nuanced.
Mm.
I've read Jay's works, and he's engaging, but there are lands where what we would call murder is a virtue, but it's usually because it's one group of people identifying other groups of people as non-humans.
Hutus and the
Or as
Tutsis.
the others,
Mhm.
something like that. So there's a dehumanizing
Right.
ideology that's at play.
Yeah.
So you can think of places where Islamic persecution is happening today, and it's a virtue to murder the infidel, but it's especially a virtue to murder the apostate. But for them, they wouldn't call that murder. Okay, we would from a different perspective. For them, it's wrong for them to murder other upstanding Muslims. That would be murder in their ideology. So I just feel like it needs to be
Yeah, there's
nuanced before
well,
we can
and let's talk about the abortion argument in the U.S. today or the world. It's the same thing. There's a nuance that has to be, and we'll talk about this in a minute. The two sides have their different facts. To respond to that are show me that in reality, not just projecting that. B, is it ever immoral for, to Rebecca's point, for, let me just say, a male great white shark forcefully copulating with a female great white shark? Is that rape? Right? We would never project that type of morality on the animal kingdom. And yet an evolutionary biologist would say that, there's this jump. And where did that jump come from, where it's not obligatory, but now it is obligatory, to not rape? And then the third thing I'd say is chemicals, an undirected, non-controlled, process that has no purpose, no goal in mind, random selection, all of the words they use, doesn't produce morality. It's inanimate. So now I'm having a discussion with Boone on this as we speak. And he tells me that there's a science called deterministic science, which would show that what I just said is not true. So there's a lot of ways to argue this, but I just like Greg Kokel's approach. Chemicals don't determine morality. Just doesn't happen. Naf.
A problem that it just seems to be the evolutionists run into this wall, and they just can't. They don't try and move past it. Of the problem of the law of causality, that things don't come from nothing, and you can't get morality from something that's amoral. I mean, and that's the case that you're making, but they don't. It seems like if you want to hold to evolution in any way, if you want to believe that there's no first cause, then you can't hold to you can't hold that.
Right.
And so then there's no reason that they would have a problem if they're going to accept. It's just entirely illogical, and so there's no reason that they would accept. Thinking that morality can also be evolved is perfectly congruent with the rest of their ideas.
Yes, I agree. I think the whole theory of evolution is bankrupt. I think I've got 6 reasons. Fossil evidence is very scant. The number of frauds are just multiple, and they continue every day. Irreducible complexity, the information in the genetic code. Eminent scientists across the world, atheists, are saying this is a bankrupt theory. We need to find a new one. Just look at the Royal Society meeting of 2016. And the last one is the computational problem that Jacob showed us here on the stage last year. It's just impossible to create one gene or one protein in the amount of time that they all say the world has existed. So it's bankrupt to begin with, Naphtali, to your point. And on top of that, you're not going to get morality from chemicals.
I think that this, like,
Yeah.
is trying to make a positive case, but there's actually such a huge negative case to be made against evolution.
Yeah.
Be like on its own merits. If you ignore humanity,
Mhm.
ignore our morality, and then just take a natural process and take a group of apes, what would we expect? And you would expect a species that is like fine-tuned for survival.
Right.
It only cares about getting genes into the next generation, so
Yeah.
it would be perfect, it'd be great.
Yeah.
And then also, so would killing the elderly, because they're useless.
Yeah.
Killing anybody
Who threatens you and threatens your kingdom, like your son.
Racism would be
Yeah.
a virtue.
Yeah.
And so would killing off anything that has like
Sure.
defects.
Hey, listen, I'm in 2 Kings right now, and one of the mothers, I can't remember her name, but one of the mothers of the king decided to kill all of the seed so she could continue to be queen, you know.
Jezebel's granddaughter, I think, or daughter.
Sounds good to me. But anyway, it's not just an animal kingdom thing, right?
I'm gonna say Nix wouldn't argue this.
He does, though.
No, because he would never say moral law. It's
Well,
law.
yeah. He would say, well, I'll tell you, to your point,
It would be
here.
something like social morality.
Yeah, and Kevin, here's the move now. The move is today, it's a guy like Michael Roos says that we have been tricked into believing that we have objective morality, when in fact we don't. So this is the move today that you need to be aware of. Because most atheists will deny objective morality, but now you have Roos and others saying, we believe we have it, therefore we have it. But we've been tricked into believing that we have it.
So they do.
Bruce is a very interesting example here, but I don't think he's representative.
No, he's
And the
not.
reason is he's rubbed too many shoulders from too many Christians,
Yeah.
and so things have rubbed off.
Yeah.
I am not convinced that the average atheist would have to hold that there's objective morality, simply that there is social morality.
Agreed.
And it's a group feature
Yeah.
that has evolutionary advantage.
Yes.
It doesn't
Yes.
have to be objective.
Yes.
It's something that we have maybe intuitively
Yeah.
agreed upon as a social group.
Right.
Anyone who seeks to violate that, we eliminate.
Yes, yeah, like social contract kind of thing, right? Yes. But I just want to point this out because I'm hearing this more and more, people referring to, and Roos and E.O. Wilson, they wrote a book, The Evolution of Ethics in Religion and the Natural Sciences. So they seem to be making this move more often. And in fact, you know the atheist that Eric Hernandez debated, he's using this move now as well. And it's tougher to think through that a little bit. Like we've been tricked into thinking, but to Kevin's point, if you admit that we've been tricked into thinking that morality is objective, what's the truth? Morality is not objective, right? It's subjective.
Socially constructed.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to go there so you can get somebody. Even Michael Roos, you could get him there pretty quickly. Here's another. Oh my goodness.
If you switch back to the oh yeah, that just makes it.
There we go. But I think Roos, Michael Roos is onto something here. You know, suppose this is a good sort of thought experiment for someone that you may be talking to that thinks that evolution gives us objective morality. If you turn the clock back, we would have evolved completely differently, right? And he gives an example. Imagine that instead of savanna-dwelling primates that we evolved from, like termites, we needed to dwell in darkness, eat each other's faces, and cannibalize the dead. Our epigenetic rules, right, those instincts inside of us, would be very different. Our minds would be strongly prone to extol such acts as beautiful and moral. We would find it disgusting to live in the open air, dispose of body waste, and bury the dead. So the point is, for any evolutionists, all you got to do is turn the clock back on them, and they can't deny this, right? And to Kevin's point, then it isn't objective morality. It's morality that's whatever's constructed socially, along the way. Yes, Princess.
Would he like, well, you're not in his mind, but would he, that, like, is he making a point to say that, I guess since evolution, quote unquote, not evolution, the objective morality is a product of evolution in man, in humans?
The perception of objective morality, yeah.
Are they trying to say that it's like heading to like perfection? Because if it's evolving, then shouldn't it be getting better?
Yeah, good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, right? Because I was like, okay, would they say that the perception of the objective morality in humans is better than that of animals? Maybe probably they would say that. But then, like, are they now like hinting to the fact that it's getting to a point where it's going to be perfect?
I would think an evolutionary biologist would say that, but I don't know. They might claim that. I also want to make sure you understand what our friend Darwin thought of this, okay? With me, the horrid doubt always arises whether the convictions of man's mind, which has been developed from the mind of the lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy. Would anyone trust the convictions of a monkey's mind, even moral convictions, if there are any convictions in such a mind? Right? Even Darwin doubted this particular issue. Our friend Richard Dawkins, he just basically says there's no rhyme or reason, there's no objective morality, no purpose, no evil. You guys have seen this quote a million times. I've got a few more objections if you want to take them. If you need to leave, please leave, okay? We understand that. But this next one is a good one. People are naturally concerned with each other and the betterment of society. That's where morality comes from, right? I know what's good for Jacob and not good for Jacob, and he knows what's good for me and not good for me. And so we just extrapolate that out 8 billion times, and that's kind of where morality comes from. How would you answer that?
They don't drive on 380 at rush hour.
Yeah, right. But Soma first and then Naphtali.
I'm just thinking of the idea of the survival of the fittest and like how evolution plays. So if my chances of surviving is by being selfish and caring about my own good, my own survival, then this doesn't make sense because I only want what's good for me.
Yeah, the social contract breaks down at that point, and that kind of language will work, exactly what you're saying. Because at some point, very early on in any social transaction, you start to think about what's good for number one, right? Naf and then Aaron.
It seems like if this were the case, then we wouldn't need a judicial system, and there wouldn't be places like, there wouldn't be war.
Yeah, Putin and Ukraine, and yeah, good point. Aaron.
With the selfishness thing, I thought that was a good argument, but then I was thinking with like apes, for example, like with the evolution theory would be that apes had to survive in groups, so they had to have a social construct. So wouldn't that, in that case, then couldn't they then counter-argue with them saying, well, apes were naturally designed to have a social construct, so their evolution morality would be in a social group, not just selfishness, because they have to be in a group to survive.
Yeah, I think going back to the previous challenge, That's a part of it. When you see animals like that acting in sort of moralistic ways, but my response would be, we are projecting morality on them. They don't see it as morality. They may see it as instinct or defense mechanisms or protecting, the baby I just gave birth to. But at the same time, a male gorilla, he's going to get rid of one of his offspring who threatens him and threatens his dominance, right? So you can see a counterbalance to that as well. Chris.
So I'm doing this kind of on the fly, just thinking out loud, but it seems to me like there's three sources of morality. One, particularly in the animal kingdom, is just instinct that has been designed and built into those animals.
Yeah.
Even an ant colony has an organization.
Right.
There is social behavior.
Yeah.
And they are just born with that natural instinct.
Yeah.
The ducks that Rebecca was mentioned, that is indwelt within them at the moment of birth. It is there to begin with. There is no learning, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
In higher primates, you might say, well, there could be some learning going on where they have cooperative behavior. And so, in addition to whatever instinct they have, they're developing a cooperative behavior in their social group. So instinct, I say, that's built in. It may be less in us than it might be in the animal kingdom. We have to learn a lot of our morality. We are not necessarily born with all the right instincts or the things that we develop as we become educated and assimilated into a culture. So, secondly, cultures can develop morality. And what is acceptable and unacceptable in one culture could be completely foreign to another culture.
Yeah.
And they have very different rules that they follow.
Right.
And so that is something that is totally a construct within people groups that develop what they think is right and what's wrong, and what they can do and what they can't do, and how they can view themselves and how they behave amongst themselves, the honor among thieves kind of idea, but everybody else is fair game to do whatever you want. And reclassify other people, or just automatically classify other people outside of my social group or my tribe as somehow different, and therefore we don't have to treat them in that same cooperative behavioral way like we do people within our social group.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, we have the Word of God that instructs us, and that, I think, is the real source of objective morality. There may be some part of that that is instinctive, but it seems like with the humans that not as much as instinct as it is in lower forms of life. That it is something that is learned and constructed over time, and in our case revealed from the deity.
Yeah. Want to comment on your number 2 there. It's really interesting to look at, sociologists look at the moral behavior of babies, and they conduct experiments. Really interesting to see how early a baby can detect whether something morally wrong is going on or not in front of them. Yeah, right. But also, to your third point, what are the 3 I's that Kevin taught us last week? They're really, really good, you guys. When you think about biblical morality in these 3 categories, what's one I? Idolatry. What's the second? Injustice. And immorality. Yeah. And those three categories are really useful for you as you talk this out with your friends and family in regards to God's, moral law for us. So Zach, last question and comment.
Yeah, I want to say quickly, to Princess's point earlier, and I think maybe I'm missing some things, but I think this argument just breaks down, like, why would anyone or any people act morally if they weren't trying to construct something more perfect? Like, and what is this perfect thing? Even within their group.
Yeah.
Is this objective?
Yeah, yeah. So
Cooperative
you're...
behavior objective? I think cooperative behavior, I'm not, like John said, I'm not going to do harm to you because I don't expect you to do harm to me. But that kind of cooperative action within your group.
Yeah. So I was looking for that answer, and I want to flesh that out a little bit. I talked a minute ago about the confusion between epistemology and ontology. It's resonant here. Can you see it? So you have somebody saying, I can do moral things. And you can do. Jen and I can have a contract and do moral things, and we're all good. But that's not the point. The point is, Princess? Oh, okay. The point is, where is that morality grounded? Where does it come from? So don't get lost in these kind of arguments, because your friends will take you this, and then you can argue this but not really make the point. Make sense? Okay. We've got plenty more objections if we needed. For example, this one. Oh, this is a juicy one. We got to do this one, you guys. I agree that some morals are objective, like rape. But you Christians add in other prohibitions, like abortion, sex outside of marriage, and homosexuality. How do you justify those as objective?
Well, you can kind of go around. You can say, well, if rape is wrong, then there must be an objective moral standard. And if there's an objective moral standard, then there must be an objective moral person.
Lawgiver.
Yeah. And then
Yes. That's one way in. I like that way in. It's a presuppositional approach because it believes that there is a God of the Bible, and we're going to listen to the authority of the God of the Bible. Okay? I like that. There's another approach that doesn't, it's not presuppositional. Let me just quickly go there. I agree that some morals are objective, like rape. Do you? Do you actually believe that some morals are objective, like rape? Because I can find an example of somebody thinking that rape is a good thing. In different cultures, in different times. I mean, you don't have to go back too many thousands of years to see that somebody wants to cast their seed as far as possible. Even in our current lifetimes, you guys, we've got OBGYNs who've got 110 kids, right? Because they artificially inseminated women while they were unconscious. So, but that was good for him to do that. So you're saying it's objectively wrong, but he doesn't think it's objectively wrong. Okay? So by that reasoning then, we could also say that these then don't rely, see it, Kurt, that you can't argue these as well without God, without a transcendent objective morality, right? So I think you can take the person in that direction as well. You have to come back to the presuppositional argument. So, all right. Plenty more to talk about in this space. And in closing, we can use this without a doubt to show that God exists. We all have a moral nature. We all have the ability to understand right or wrong, even though there can be confusion at time in moral dilemmas, right? And as Greg Kokel says, we all know there's something wrong in the world. We can take advantage of that understanding and that knowledge. Two, God's morality is in his nature. It's good for me. It's good for you. Embrace that, particularly you young people. Don't give that away. It'll save you in many different ways. And then thirdly, we can be confident that God has a plan to take care of the evil that's in the world. And if you haven't lately read the juxtaposition between, God's promises, and Kevin did a great job showing us last week, of the promise to the nations, back to Abraham, all the way to Jesus' great command for us to go and disciple all nations. That is a part of God's great story. We've landed in the middle of it, and we know how it's going to end. So evil will be done away with, and it'll be sequestered off. So, any final comments, thoughts, questions?
I have an announcement once you get through.
Okay, Kevin.
Years ago, Jay Richards
Yeah.
and Christopher Hitchens at Stanford University. I'm suspecting you can find the video on YouTube, but I don't think I've looked it up. But in that debate, Jay Richards made a statement that has just sat with me ever since then, where he said that a theistic worldview provides a more suitable metaphysical home for moral truths than an atheistic worldview. And I thought that was a great way of phrasing it, a more suitable metaphysical home than an atheistic worldview.
So true.
And that way, just noting that moral truths are more comfortable in a theistic worldview, that just has legs.
Yeah, it does. It does. It has a lot of partners, too. Albert Mohler this morning in his daily broadcast was talking about how he relished being on the stage to talk about these kind of things with the Jewish rabbis and with Islamic imams because of the theistic shared nature of their worldview. Now, of course, there's many disagreements as well, but to your point, theism provides the platform for that. Say it again.
A more suitable metaphysical home.
Yeah, a more suitable metaphysical home. Nice. Princess, last comment.
I would say that, even for the atheist or whoever is denying objective morality, it kind of is evident of what happened in the Garden of Eden. Because man ate of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and became like God in the sense of now determining for themselves what is like good and what is like evil.
Yeah.
And so we have a case where everyone is now in their own way defining that. So it's kind of hard to argue with someone who made themselves their own God.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually I'm one of my to-do list items to create a discussion presentation on the original sin and the significance and the theological significance of it. And I'm sure Kevin and Danny and others have done this before, but I'm realizing this. But just it's shocking to me to think that Adam and Eve wanted so badly to know about evil. All they knew about was good and perfection, right? And so, as evidenced by the fact that the minute they knew evil, they felt shame and they needed to clothe themselves, right? But yeah, that's our natural inclination even today.